And can you?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, sweet. So this week, as we talked about last week, obviously we finished putting together the kind of the remaining areas of some of our kind of digital marketing plans, and hopefully that gave you guys something to be kind of thinking about and starting to corral some of your kind of thoughts and actions around over the next few weeks. This week, to try and mop up a few kind of questions that we've had over the last few weeks that we've had in from Twitter and that you guys have maybe got yourself today. I know, Seb, you've got a few things you wanted to ask later on as well. So what I thought we'd do is, and obviously we've corralled some of these over the last few weeks, so I've put a few slides together on some of the specific questions we've had in here. I think we had 9 in total sent to me, which was quite nice, and quite sad that some of them are feeling a little shy today and haven't joined us to get their answers, but there we go. As ever, we'll stick these online and stuff later, so you're more than welcome to refer back to that or to share that video clip with anyone that might find it useful later. So what I thought I might do is kind of work through these kind of 8, 9 questions at this end to start with, if that's okay. And then at the end, then we'll kind of hand it over to you guys. And if there's anything specific you want to have a conversation about or ask about at the end, then we can do that, if that's okay. Cool. So first one was from a gent that we've been kind of chatting to for a little while, actually, about websites, who essentially had come down to a situation looking between WordPress and Wix and wanted to know what the kind of the pros and cons are. Obviously, we talked right back in session 1 about the importance of having some kind of dedicated homepage that you guys own and have obviously autonomy and control over. And WordPress and Wix are 2 of the more common solutions that we come across day to day. Obviously, Squarespace is another one that's super popular in terms of being cheap, really quick to get set up and working with. WordPress is a platform we personally deliver probably 90% of our web builds in. Actually, we find it's something that does the job for basically any purpose, but Wix is one that from some fairly kind of naff beginnings originally, where it was a place you could throw together quite cheesy and cool looking Flash websites and stuff, but ultimately kind of functionally didn't really offer kind of a huge amount and were always kind of traditionally bogged down with really gross strip advertising and banners and stuff that didn't really, when I say strip advertising, I don't mean like strip clubs and stuff, obviously, but kind of really intrusive banner advertisements and stuff that would be kind of put there to offset the fact that users were getting it for free. So in terms of pros and cons, Wix we'll cover first. Wix is really fast, simple to get to work. You can get a website up and online within literally 20-30 minutes of signing up for an account over there. For you guys that have maybe not got a huge amount of kind of technical knowledge and haven't got the skills to be able to kind of code out your own website, it's something that you can get to work with really quickly. And it's something that means you can just kind of have a fixed kind of monthly cost as well for all of your security licenses, your domain, your hosting, everything's kind of taken care of in one kind of place. And at the same time, all of your kind of security protocols, all of the steps that would be kind of necessary to keep your site secure and to keep your visitors secure and stuff, again, is all kind of taken care of for you. So it's kind of a solution that you can turn to and get really nice looking results in reality these days very quickly. There are some cons and some downsides to it. To start with, in the T's and the C's of Wix that a lot of people will skip right past, in reality, you don't actually kind of own that website or have any real control over it. Wix could take it down, Wix could go out of business tomorrow, and ultimately your website, your content, and all of the organic traffic that you're getting for it would all kind of disappear in a heartbeat. So obviously it's something that is a little bit more of kind of a house on shifting sands, is how I always kind of pitch it to people. While it is, sorry, I'm just going to escape out of these slides for 2 seconds to let in Charlene, who's just joined us. There we go. Good morning, Charlene. I don't know if you can hear us okay at that end. Hey, Charlene, how you doing? So, can you guys now see the slides okay at that end, or have we now? Yeah, you've still got them okay?
Still see them, yeah.
Cool, perfect. So let's just now minimize that out of the way. Okay. In terms of, so Charlene, just to bring you up to speed very quickly, this first question that we'd had through was asking the kind of the relative pros and cons of WordPress or Wix as two potential kind of website hosting platforms. We'd run through kind of the pros of Wix at the top in terms of it being kind of a very quick, very low cost option to get people online with kind of very limited kind of technical knowledge. We did talk about the fact, however, you don't really own that, and the kind of the control, and that could disappear from that site tomorrow. Ultimately, if you violate Wix's terms and conditions, whether those terms and conditions change, whether they go out of business, ultimately that site could all kind of disappear in a heartbeat. It does have some really nice looking themes and options and stuff available to you guys from a design point of view. But it does have some fairly limited customization and functionality in there. It doesn't give you the ability to maybe drill down and customize your site to quite the same degree. And from the kind of personal experience and what we've seen of doing analysis from the outside, they don't seem to be quite as SEO friendly as WordPress in terms of the way they both integrate with Google and kind of push site information back as well. So if you're going into a super competitive field and SEO is going to be a really important thing for you, then WordPress might be something that is perhaps a little bit more fit for purpose. Looking at WordPress as a solution, obviously in terms of pros, it's incredibly customizable. Literally everything that you can see within the front end of WordPress can be kind of customized and made bespoke to whatever purpose you need. And in that regard, it offers kind of maximum bang for your buck, we always kind of say to people, in terms of offering a fairly low cost solution up front, but one that still gives you guys incredible amounts of customization and flexibility with what you want to do. There's a massive kind of community of WordPress people around the world. I mean, it powers some 20% of all the websites online. So as a result, if you kind of take delivery of a WordPress website from someone like me, for instance, you're not tied to that person long term. There is a massive community of people out there who will be able to kind of expand and develop on that website over time. And as a result of that, there's always kind of new updates, new improvements, new kind of innovations and stuff being launched onto the WordPress market as well. Only real cons to the site from our perspective is that obviously it does cost a little bit more upfront in terms of you guys needing to buy, kind of hosting, a security license, and all those kind of technical extras to actually kind of deliver the site. And in terms of your kind of day-to-day management and updates of it, it's a little bit more kind of technically involved. We deliver WordPress sites to kind of clients of all sorts of kind of technical ability and stuff, and even the guys who aren't, massively techie have all been quite happy kind of running with a WordPress environment and kind of managing that day to day. So yeah, it's one that is very simple and very robust to work with, but does require a little bit more kind of knowledge and technical nous than something more kind of drag and drop like Wix. So I mean, ultimately it will come down to a combination of factors for anyone, budget usually being the primary one. From our side, in terms of the functionality and the performance of it, we think WordPress is a much better option, but ultimately, there's a kind of a solution out there for everyone. So while we'd personally plump for WordPress in that situation, like I said, there's something for everyone. Next one we'd had was more of a design-based question. This might be something that you guys have come across day to day. I've been asked for a vector version of my logo. What is that? Very simply, to get into kind of graphic design territory for a little moment, there's two sorts of kind of file formats that graphics are arranged into. So you've got vector files, which you might have seen on your computers as, .ai files, if they've been put together in Adobe Illustrator, .eps, .svg. And what these are essentially mathematical equations that plot the size, color, dimensions, and stuff of a particular shape. So when you go and stretch, say, the red circle on the left-hand side there, because you're not actually stretching an image, you're stretching a calculation that will end up with a red circle. You can stretch that to any size and it will retain the same resolution, the same internal proportions and everything else. As you can see with the raster file on the right hand side, things like JPEGs, GIFs, PNGs that are like the pictures that come off your phone, for instance, they are more of what you'd think of as like a fixed canvas as such. So there is a fixed set of dimensions that picture takes up, and each of the pixels within that has got a particular color value associated to it, which obviously when you add them all up will show you a red and blue circle. The problem comes with those raster graphics when you try and say stretch them up to fill, I don't know, an A4 page rather than an A5 flyer, is that obviously the computer's kind of got to stretch that image and kind of fill the gaps in between, which is how you end up with this kind of jagged pixelated edge that you can see around there. So whereas when you stretch a vector, it kind of will stretch and manipulate kind of seamlessly, and you won't lose that resolution. With a raster graphic, you've got essentially a fixed resolution of that. And so then when you kind of start stretching it and manipulating it, you'll then start to lose the resolution and end up with this nasty kind of pixelated look there. So I'm hoping that makes sense. Does that make sense to all you guys? Perfect. So that's another one off the list. So from Jane in Peterborough, how often should I be posting on my blog and how long should it be? I think we've mentioned a couple of times over the last few sessions how important we think blogs are as part of a content marketing strategy and a really important part of your mix. Obviously just to kind of recap to those kind of slides before, not only is it a great source of kind of keyword content going into your website each week, it's a great source for new social media posts going out each week. You haven't got to keep repeating yourself and, trying to essentially flog a dead horse and keep sending people to the same pages on your site. Obviously, the more kind of content that you can put out into the world, it helps to build your kind of authority and trust with Google as Google starts to realize, that you are starting to put together a really useful flow of keyword content. And the other thing it does as well is enhances your reputation with customers visiting the site. If they've got a reason to come back and the stuff that you're putting out there is of interest and of value to them, then ultimately it's a really useful tool and one of the really useful kind of ongoing tools that's at your disposal to keep kind of developing that reputation for yourself and hopefully developing relationships with the people coming to the site.
Ben,
yes.
Can I just ask a quick question? I have a blog for my Miss Campbell website, which is through WordPress.
Okay.
However, since then I've changed PCs, lost some data for some things, and I can't get access to the WordPress blog.
Okay.
And I've tried to do the forget my password, etc. But it just keeps saying that the information I'm inputting is incorrect. I've tried to contact WordPress to see if I can get access to my blog again, and they passed me from department to different people, and I still can't get to the bottom of login details to my blog.
Okay.
So I haven't updated it perhaps for about 5 months, which is really frustrating because it's been quite key in driving a lot of traffic to the misscampbell.co.uk website.
I can imagine, yeah.
Have you got any tips on how I could try to gain access to it, or at least,
Yeah, there is another way that you can do it. And what it requires is going in through your hosting account. What you can do with WordPress sites is there's a kind of a section of it that you can go into, which is the database essentially that governs the front end of your website. So obviously you can administer some of that database through your dashboard as you normally would, but you can also access some of the other parts of that database through your hosting account. And what you essentially have to do is go into that database, find the section for users, find your specific username, and you can reset the password and the email address associated with it manually through there. Do you know who your hosting's with?
So it's not the website that's been hosted through WordPress, it's just my blog. So I have a free so it's called misscampbellessentials.wordpress.com, just a regular blog.
Okay, so it's a WordPress.com blog rather than a self-hosted work.
Exactly. So I've got my website hosted through GoDaddy, and then the blog is hosted through WordPress, and I just link. So I've just got a news section which links straight through to the external blog.
Sure.
But it's the external blog that I can't update, which is really like my news feed of things that's happening. And
sure. I mean, there should be a way of being able to kind of integrate the two and utilize the kind of the posts functionality within your Miss Campbell site to kind of keep the blog self-contained within there, which might be one option for you kind of in the short term to start adding stuff in there. But What I might do is perhaps offline, if we pick this up kind of offline, I'm more than happy
Okay.
to have a look for you and try and get to the bottom of it and get in,
Thank you.
because yeah, it should be a relatively straightforward thing, recovering kind of account access.
That's what I thought.
So,
Yeah, but I just had some. Okay, that sounds good. I'll message you
no
separately.
worries. And like I say, for belt and braces, I'll also send you a link to the kind of the instructions for following it through on GoDaddy as well. Because like I say, there is a way you can get into your database through your GoDaddy account that will enable you to make kind of user account changes and password changes and stuff manually. I had a WordPress site myself recently that decided to throw a wobbly and stop sending the forget my password emails. And so until we found out what the problem was and fixed it, we were having to do the same thing for user and go in and manually adjust the passwords kind of on a kind of line by line basis. But yeah, no worries. I'm going to add a note to my list at this end for this afternoon, and I'll drop you a note to pick up on that offline if that's all right, and I'll try and help you get to the bottom of that. Cool. So in terms of kind of general advice that we give to people when we're helping them start to develop a blog strategy for the first time, we try and say really that blog posts that score well from an SEO point of view will usually be between 300 and 500 words in length. We tend to find that that's quite a nice kind of length for blog posts. Usually once you've tried to identify what your keyword or key phrase is for that particular blog post, make sure that you include that in your titles, your headers, your subheaders as you work through the copy. Make sure that it's in your meta description. So, whether you're using something like Yoast or all-in-one SEO, something like that to help you optimize particular pieces of content within your site, then make sure your meta description and title have got your keyword included in there. Obviously include images with appropriate titles if you can, ideally featuring the keyword, and the same with your alt tags, which hopefully you guys all remember from previous weeks. And the other thing we always encourage people to try and put in is some links as well, both internally to something within your website, whether that be a click here to explore the range in full if it was a Miss Campbell thing, or whether that be a general click here to contact us for any more information, stuff like that. And also obviously some external links really help as well. So if there's a relevant external link to maybe a guest post author or a relevant partner website, something like that, then if you can kind of go through that checklist of even those 5 items, we'll say to people, you'll start to see far more benefit for your blog posts and a little bit more bang for your buck as well. So yeah, hopefully those 5 posts there will be a useful kind of roadmap when you guys are starting to kind of put together blog posts. This is one we've had from a couple of clients recently who are particularly looking to try and save money at this particular moment in time. Do we need a security license on our website when we're trying to save costs where we can? It's understandable. People look at the budget and go, $8-9.99 a month. Could we be getting rid of that? And honest answer is, yeah, you really do need a security license in place for your website. As I think we've talked about in previous lessons, that sounds awful, doesn't it? Webinars. For one, it encrypts your website traffic and provides a nice level of security to both yourself and the visitors that are visiting your website. If you are an e-commerce site accepting kind of payments for stuff online, then you've got to have an SSL requirement in place for PCI compliance. Not having one, as we've talked about in previous weeks, I think can impact your SEO score. And obviously, I can't remember if we showed some examples of this last week or not, but obviously, if you've not got a site license in place, then a lot of browsers now are starting to flag sites that are potentially unsecure, and things like Google Chrome and Safari and the Macs as well will block you wholesale from trying to get through to a site that hasn't got a license in place, because it will have flagged it as a security risk. So yeah, while it is easy to identify as something that is perhaps a cost we could live without right now, from a best practice point of view, yeah, always need a security license in place. From my friend Grant, who's actually down in Hemel but works for a Northampton-based company. Our videos look a bit rubbish. How can I put some production value in without spending a fortune? Obviously, I think we've talked, I can't remember whether it was webinar 2 or webinar 3, but we talked about what an important part video plays, especially in social media and trying to grab people's attention. But, there is a danger sometimes that, any idiot with a camera can stand in front of it and publish it in the name of content. And, there is a danger sometimes that there is, a lot of noise out there. And I'm finding LinkedIn in particular is getting really bad for people that want to kind of sit and pontificate in front of a camera for, 7 to 8 minutes first thing in the morning. But there are some really easy ways that you can, with a little bit of time and a little bit of tinkering, add some quite nice kind of production value to your kind of video clips that you're putting together. To start with, we always say to people to try and think about the environment you're filming in, because ultimately trying to get nice looking footage at the start of the process is going to be the key to ending up with a nice looking video at the end of it. So, choose a location that is well lit, ideally with natural light, which is going to be the nicest way of lighting you guys and getting quite a nice and natural looking shot. There's nothing worse than that kind of hostage video vibe when you're kind of in the dark and you've just got, spotlight shining on you. At the same time, trying to avoid being kind of backlit. I don't know if anyone's had any experience this last few weeks of Zoom calls where they've been kind of illuminated in silhouette from behind. That's been quite interesting at times. So if you can, try and avoid that as well. Obviously find somewhere quiet so that, the only thing that is going to be on that video is your voice, if it's an explainer or something like that. When it comes to actually putting your video clips together, one of the things we find our clients find most helpful is actually an auto cue app, and something that will act as a teleprompter on your device. We've got one that we use called Teleprompter, which you can find in iOS and I think in the Android app stores as well. And that acts in exactly what it sounds like a teleprompter would on TV. So you can input your script right at the beginning of the process, set the kind of the speed to, how fast you want it to run through and get used to the speed of it. And then it records your kind of videos straight onto your phone then without the, obviously the script being overlaid. But obviously while that kind of keeps you on message and makes sure that you've got kind of a nice consistent flow and you don't have, lots of long, which, I know I'm terrible for, but, it's a way that you can kind of avoid that and keep everything kind of flowing and quite nice and professional. And on a practical level, because when you're recording the video, it overlays the auto cue content at the top of the screen, it helps focus your eye on the camera at the top. So you actually end up with a really natural kind of organic, it doesn't look like you're kind of looking over the phone, a list of notes or anything like that. It helps kind of keep the eyes focused in a really nice place as well. So as simple as it sounds, we found a teleprompter can really help people when it comes to putting video content together. If you've got the time and you've got, perhaps a bit of software, whether it be on the Mac or the iPad and stuff, then, adding logos as kind of a watermark in the top corners, adding on-screen text, bottom thirds, which is, when you see, name and job title and stuff displayed across the bottom of a screen, that's referred to as a bottom third. And even things like add in royalty-free music and stuff over the background as well can all add to hopefully a slightly more professional looking kind of video clip at the end of all of that. And there's some really great apps that are available to you guys for doing that. I've put a list together here of ones that, we make use of on a daily basis for putting together, little clips and bits of material for people. So, there's free ones available like iMovie and Apple Clips, which are two that are fairly popular and quick to get started with. I don't know if any of you guys have got an Adobe Creative account. Obviously, Adobe now sell kind of cloud software rather than like a boxed version of Photoshop like they used to. So while I end up paying hundreds of pounds a month in software for my all singing, all dancing kind of creative suite, there is kind of a whole range of free tools that they make available on the same kind of service. And they're apps that you can run both in your browser, so you could run it on your laptop or your desktop, and also on your iPads, tablets, phones and stuff as well. So the two there, Adobe Premiere Rush and Adobe Spark Video, are two for free that you can start making use of right away. Sign up for a free account at adobe.com and you can start to get to work with those, and they'll put together, like I say, really nice, really professional looking little video clips. You can download kind of stock bits of footage or icons, any of those little extra flourishes that you'd normally sit there going, shit, how do I get those on? How could I put something like that in my video? Those apps are a perfect place to start with things like that. And I think Spark Video is the same as Spark Post, which does a similar job, but for kind of photos and text. You can even kind of pick existing templates and kind of remix other people's kind of work and stuff to suit your own purposes as well and stuff. So it's something that, yeah, if you guys have got a little bit of time and want to start kind of making a little bit more of video, then yeah, any of these apps on here would be kind of a good place to start in terms of starting to try and kind of get to grips with that for the first time. So yeah, hopefully that answers that one.
Sorry, Ben, just to go onto the video that
yeah,
you
no
just
problems.
mentioned, is I realise you've just named a few of them. Which one would you say is a good sort of starting one? The reason I ask that is because, funnily enough, one of my questions later on will be about mixing content and doing videos and such forth.
Sure.
And I've actually digged out the I say the wife's, I think it was both of ours from a holiday 10 years ago, the old selfie stick revolution.
Sure.
And I might actually do a video or two this weekend.
Yeah.
Which, as you can imagine, I'm really not looking forward to. But so I know, obviously, you know, I wouldn't say I'm comfortable, but I'm quite happy of doing 50 takes and seeing which one looks, and, you know, I'm not stuttering, I'm sounding okay, etc.
Yeah.
But I haven't really got a clue, although I'm quite, you know, I'm quite to do with software. I can learn something if I'm given it. Which software out of the ones that you've listed would you say, you know what, try this one first maybe, and that's a good starting one? Because the only thing I'd really do is possibly have, you know, maybe like a screenshot in between different scenes. So one of me outside a vehicle, you know, and maybe put like a link or, you know, a title underneath, just something very basic to start with.
Yeah. Tell me, what devices are you kind of working on? Are you on Mac?
I've got a Mac.
Cool. I mean, iMovie is a dead quick and easy one that kind of
Okay.
baked into Mac. So that's one that with kind of zero kind of knowledge and skills, you can get to work with that and start to do exactly the kind of things you're talking about in terms of, you know, adding maybe a split screen or, you know,
just, I mean, we're talking real basic, you know, just for the first few videos. So yeah, I mean, I've got iMovie, so I've never
that you'll be able
it,
to get to grips with right away and make use of. And failing that, they run in a slightly kind of similar way in terms of the look and feel. But the two Adobe apps that I've put down there as well, Premiere Rush and Spark Video, both work really well.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of seeing templates or seeing little hints and helpers, because then I suppose you can look at it and think, well, you know what, that would work, that wouldn't.
Yeah, Premiere Rush is great for that because they've got like a whole library of like kind of animated transitions and effects and stuff. And you can literally, if you want to, you know, kind of download some really nice looking kind of bits and put together some really cool looking video clips off the back of it. So yeah, certainly those two. The iMovie one is certainly one you can pick up and get running with straight away. The Premiere Rush one is one that is perhaps a little bit slightly more advanced, but again, very simple, very intuitive to use, and ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably, you know, give iMovie a try, see how I get on with that, and maybe move on to the Adobe stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
A few videos down the line.
Absolutely. And the other great thing with the Adobe thing is obviously you can, for instance, start something on your phone and then push it over to another device to finish off or kind of add to and stuff later. So there's some really good kind of cloud-based options there for moving stuff around. But yeah, either one of those two, I'd say, would be perfect for you kind of starting out. And then finally, you know, if you kind of pop onto Amazon, eBay, any of those kind of places, they're also now, you can buy some kind of equipment add-ons for videos and stuff very cheaply as well. I did a session at East Northants last year where we took in, you know, a whole kind of rig for them with, you know, lights and clip-on tripods and mobile kind of booms for carrying kind of mics and cameras and stuff around. And in fairness, you can put together a pretty good kind of video rig for 100, 150 pounds in terms of, you know, a nice tripod, a clip-on external lighting if you've got a film anywhere that's particularly dark, and even kind of external microphones and stuff and windshields. So you can pick up, you know, some really useful bits of kit from people like Rode and that for, like I say, 30, 35 pounds for a decent microphone, and literally as cheap as kind of 15, 20 quid for external lighting and stuff as well. So if it's something that, you know, actually you find yourself going, wow, I'm always working in dark, grotty environments, and I've got clients that do that, you know, then actually they find, you know, for the sake of 20 quid for ending up with better looking video footage out at the end of it, that it's kind of well worth it. So again, if anyone's interested and wants me to send some kind of links and stuff for products that we use on a kind of a regular basis or have recommended to other people, then again, more than happy to pass some links and stuff across. But yeah, there's stuff out there for, again, all sorts of budgets. So like I say, have a play, have an experiment, and I'm sure it's something you guys will be able to see some benefit from. kind of picking up, and I deliberately put this one after the previous question, actually, because it's one that I get asked quite often, and I kind of alluded to. Where can I find free stock photography? Obviously, stock photography, I'm assuming you guys know already, that's kind of generic, kind of license-free stuff that you guys can pick up to kind of augment what you are putting out into the world. Really great way of kind of making blog posts look nicer if you've got gaps on your website, or, you know, even social media and stuff, just to make posts a little bit more engaging or visual. We've put some really useful links here for ones that we use on a regular basis. Pixabay and Unsplash for two are both very good stock libraries that you can make use of. Pixabay in particular has got quite a good video library, as well as kind of vector graphics, illustrations, cartoons, all kinds of stuff. That's a really good one. Free Stock and Stock Vault as well have got quite good libraries, although I think there are some restrictions on like the number of images you can download from some of them in a day or a month. And then at the bottom, I've put two places where it's where you've got quite a wide selection of kind of royalty-free music that you can be making use of for kind of video and social content as well. One's the Free Music Archive, which is a whole load of music that's been specifically released on a what they call a Creative Commons license. So it's something you can kind of go and make use of and kind of remix and stuff with slightly more flexibility than if you were kind of buying, I don't know, a Rolling Stones song or something to put on your video. And Bandcamp's another quite good place. It's slightly more of a labor-intensive slog working through the selection at Bandcamp, but again, there's loads of kind of royalty-free and Creative Commons licenses on there that you guys can be making use of in your video projects as well. I think we covered some of this in a previous session, but one that I'd had a couple of people mention to me over the last couple of weeks. Can we recommend a good app for making it easier to manage social media? Obviously, the two that I think we talked about specifically over the last couple of weeks were Hootsuite and Buffer, which both offer, you know, fairly similar kind of functionality in terms of what they do, publish into, you know, various platforms kind of concurrently, both app-driven that you can kind of manage from your phones or your iPads and stuff as well. I've added a couple of additional ones onto the list today that might be of interest for teams of different sizes and looking at different stuff. For one, I've put Tailwind, which is a new app we've been experimenting with lately, actually, specifically for working on Pinterest and Instagram. One that it's, I'll be honest with you, we've not done massive amounts on Pinterest for clients in the past. So this is one that we've started to use kind of in line with a new client recently. And that's quite an interesting one for kind of helping to identify kind of specific audiences and the right keywords to get to those audiences, as well as you know, helping to deliver that content and physically manage it as well. So that's a really useful one. One that we've seen has been kind of gathering some traction over the last kind of year or so, slightly more collaborative based tools as well. So whereas something like Hootsuite or Buffer is maybe geared around maybe someone like myself that's trying to manage, you know, multiple accounts for different clients and stuff, what we're seeing is slightly more involved tools and platforms being developed specifically for larger teams as well. So the two products there that we've listed are Sprout Social and Hey Orca, are both paid products rather than ones that are available on a free level, but both platforms that offer significantly greater kind of functionality in terms of their collaborative nature. Hey Orca, for instance, you can kind of collaborate with external clients on your content, and have it set up in all kinds of clever ways. So for instance, when clients sign off content, it will then automatically go into schedule on the right platform at the right kind of predetermined times and stuff. So they are, yeah, slightly more expensive, slightly more involved platforms, but, you know, for teams working with, I don't know, maybe 5-10 different you know, users within an organization, or, you know, agencies potentially working with multiple accounts and clients as well, then those two are probably well worth a look as well. And one that I've put on the bottom there, IFTTT, is kind of a really underrated gem that I mention to people all the time. It's not so much of a kind of a delivery app in the way that Buffer or Hootsuite is, in terms of, you know, scheduling content to go out at a particular time, but if can be a really important part of that kind of social media management puzzle for us, in terms of being able to kind of set up kind of daisy chains of activities for users. and kind of leave those kind of hard coded in. So for instance, when you set up a rule that says, link my Instagram and my Twitter, for instance, it will automatically pull through all of your new Instagram posts and pictures and links into Twitter without you having to, manually schedule those up every time. Obviously that takes the some of the kind of the human intervention step out of it. You might find every now and then that something goes out that you go, oh, unintended consequence, didn't expect that one to end up there, because you've set these kind of links and daisy chains up. But yeah, we find it's one that's really useful actually for kind of setting, forgetting, and just helping to kind of make social run a little bit more efficiently kind of day to day. It's also worth mentioning with If that there are all kinds of other systems and stuff that can integrate with it as well. So rather than it just being a tool that you guys can use to help to make social media delivery better or easier, for instance, there's all kinds of extra little kind of marketing tasks and stuff that you can get it running for you that can help you kind of across the kind of the marketing mix as well. For example, you could have a whole load of Google alerts set up that it then trails through and collects all of your Google alerts each day, each week, and collates it into a Google spreadsheet for you, for instance, so that each week you've got a list of potential relevant content and links ready to go. Or it can back up all of your Instagram photos into Dropbox and stuff like that. There's all kinds of kind of clever little ways that you can kind of make use of it to help not only with your kind of social media delivery, but like I say, perhaps automating some of those other more laborious parts of the marketing mix that you guys have to spend time on each week as well. So this is from our friend Lisa Abraham over in Northampton. I thought LinkedIn was just for people looking for a job. Should I be doing more on there? I don't know, by a show of hands, how many of you guys are on kind of LinkedIn kind of day to day and using that as part of your kind of activity all the time?
I'm on there, but I don't. Yeah, it's probably the least knowledgeable for me. I'm on there and I see a lot of what's going on, and I'm thinking, okay, just keep posting and hopefully you'll get it.
Sure. I mean, yeah, short answer is, yeah, we found LinkedIn to be becoming of more importance when it comes to kind of digital marketing, and its nature has definitely shifted over the last couple of years from being, like the question said, a place that you'd go and tart up when you were, looking for a new job and you were, trying to work out, how do I spin the last couple of years to make myself as attractive as possible. But over the last couple of years, what people have clocked onto is that, while we're building these networks, it's kind of crazy to not be kind of utilizing them and trying to kind of leverage it into kind of sales and stuff as well. So yeah, certainly we're seeing within organizations that are working on a kind of a sales basis, selling boxes, they found LinkedIn in particular to be a crucial part of that mix over the last few years. We talked over the last couple of weeks about the digital marketing funnel and that process of kind of walking people through the various stages of a sale. We've got a client that work in a specialist cleaning field, and they're selling kits at anywhere between £5,000 and £10,000 a time. The problem with that is obviously that customers that are spending 10 grand on a bit of kit have got a lot of questions and need walking through that process from a whole range of point of view, legal, financial, operational. There's a whole range of areas that need to be thought about for that kind of particular sales process. And what we found as a result is, empowering the staff of that company to be on LinkedIn, to be vocal, to be engaged, and to be a part of that conversation on a daily basis. We've actually found that has worked really well, actually, as a method of kind of shepherding people kind of through that process via a combination of, newsfeed content where it's kind of subtly, this is what we do, this is how we can help, and matching that with the kind of the direct activity of, oh, hey, I'm dropping you a message because I thought you'd be interested in this, hey, I'm just following up on that quote. That by mixing it in that kind of intimate and kind of broad kind of manner, we're finding actually it's a really important kind of sales tool. We're finding at the moment it's still a little less cluttered than some of the kind of the more mature places like Twitter and Facebook and stuff. That's becoming less so. I'll be honest, I'm on the fence personally about LinkedIn. I find there's a lot of noise on there that you do have to wade through. And as someone kind of admin in company pages, for instance, which get less traction and engagement than personal profiles on LinkedIn, it's a nightmare trying to cut through the noise sometimes. But obviously, it's got a very engaged audience, and especially things like the groups within LinkedIn can be a really useful kind of catalyst for new contacts, new business opportunities as well. And the one thing that we do like about LinkedIn is that, as well as kind of the text, video, pictures and stuff like that, is that you can share things like PDFs and slightly more interactive content within LinkedIn as well. So in terms of your, the materials that you're pushing out into your kind of news feed, you've got a little bit more kind of flexibility with that as well. And as we talked about, it also facilitates, as well as that, Twitter, hey, here I am, this is what I do. You can be a little bit more kind of intimate with people on LinkedIn and be a little bit more direct. Ultimately, we tend to say to people, there's a few kind of steps that we try and work through as a bit of a checklist for people, making their way on LinkedIn for the first time. First thing to do is, ensure that your profile's up to date, relevant pictures, all of the kind of experience, skills, projects and stuff that you work on day to day are in there. If you're a business, I'd imagine perhaps like yourself, Seb, where maybe referrals and reviews and stuff are really important, then making use of things like the endorsements and recommendations section and stuff will be really important, so that people landing on your profile cold understand, okay, well, look, anyone can set up a profile, but this guy's got all of these kind of endorsements and recommendations and stuff, and things like that really help. Obviously, make sure, if it's appropriate to, what you're using LinkedIn for, that you kind of mention and position, your company, your brands, as well as just, yourself. There's a danger sometimes, I think, that people go, okay, well, I work within this organization. I'm going to start working on LinkedIn. But then they start working on LinkedIn, and it's almost like I'm reinforcing my personal brand, and everyone's getting to see what an engaged, interesting, fun person I am, and how great my social media output is. But actually, it doesn't talk about your job, the company, or anything like that. So I think make sure that you're kind of keeping at the center of your kind of thinking and your content, actually what it is you do day to day and what it is you're trying to use LinkedIn for, rather than just, hey, look at me. One of the best things you can do to kind of get traction on your own kind of activity is to be engaged with other people. We're finding the algorithm within LinkedIn is particularly sensitive and sticky with things. So the more you can be kind of liking and commenting on people's posts and engaging with other stuff out there, you'll tend to find organically, you'll start to see a little bit more engagement with your own stuff as well. And obviously with that in mind, when you guys are putting stuff out into LinkedIn, be trying to be kind of mindful of that as well. It's an audience that does like to share its feedback and opinions. So if you've got something that you want to kind of talk about, or you've got some mechanism to encourage that conversation through what you're doing, then look for any opportunity that you can to try and engage with people. We tend to say to people, it is an unlimited address book. Potentially you could go on there and connect with the entire wide world, up to whatever the limit is in terms of the connections that you can have on LinkedIn. But ultimately, what you want to be doing is growing your audience with relevant contacts. I've got people that I work with on a regular basis who will go to a chamber meeting, meet 100 people, 5 of which are relevant to his business and what he's doing, but then he'll go and connect and spend the next week engaging with all 100 people on LinkedIn, which is great and really social. But if you're filling your audience with people that are ultimately irrelevant to the message you want to be putting out there, then ultimately you're going to end up spending a whole lot of time working on stuff that's potentially not of interest to them. And ultimately, when we're playing an algorithm game, what you want to try and do is make sure that the people receiving your content and information on a regular basis are acting on it and interested in it. So with that in mind, if you've got a whole long list of contacts and networks that aren't interested in anything you're saying because you're just connecting with the wrong people, then you're going to see fairly limited benefit from that. So try and make sure that the people you're connecting with on a daily basis are relevant to you and the work that you're doing, and ultimately that you're relevant to them. If you're offering a value and a service that is of interest and of value to them, then it makes your invitation to connect a lot more appealing. With that in mind, we say to people, anytime you are connecting, if you take the opportunity to personalize that experience, that does tend to really help, personalizing the invitation note. When someone does connect, following up and being sure to, kind of introduce yourself and explain, why it is you're connecting with them and how you might be able to help. And we always tend to find, asking questions in that situation is actually far more beneficial than just going in and talking about yourself, mainly because people like talking about themselves. So if you give them the opportunity to do so and ask a question of someone, we tend to find that is a far more reliable and prolific strategy than just kind of going in and going, "Hi, thanks for accepting my request. I'm Ben, here's how I can make your life great." A far more positive step we tend to find for starting that conversation is, "Hi, I'm Ben. How can I make your life easier? What is it that's causing you stress today?" And the other thing to remember, obviously, with LinkedIn is obviously as prolific as you might be on a daily basis moving forward, not everyone is. So, I've got, again, one particular person that I work with, has got some 19,000 followers on LinkedIn, which is great. And on its value, on its face, looks like a really valuable network to be able to tap into. But then when we kind of started investigating that in Sales Navigator within LinkedIn and started to drill down into that a little bit, what we found was that actually nearly 60% of those users hadn't been on LinkedIn within a month. So actually his relevant audience in that period was probably significantly under 10,000 rather than the 20 that he confidently assumed he was reaching each day with his content on there and stuff. So it's important to make sure that it's not the only thing that you guys are doing, because we do tend to find that while everyone might go on Facebook every day and might go on Insta every evening, it might only be once a week, once a month that people are going onto LinkedIn. So don't assume that, just because they are on there, that's the be all and end all in terms of kind of reaching them and researching and engaging with them. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, that's answered pretty much all the questions I had on LinkedIn, Ben. So that was really helpful.
Okay. I did notice the other thing you'd mentioned, I think, in your message about LinkedIn was about different content types and stuff like that.
Yes, I mean, that was going back to what I mentioned about the video. So, I mean, not necessarily, what you mentioned about LinkedIn is there seems to be a lot of videos on there now.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't specifically saying I need to make videos for LinkedIn. I'm just looking, especially when I look at my Instagram, I'm thinking, right, it's a lot of the same sort of like, here's a photo of this and this is the description, where I'm thinking there's questions that people ask me all the time on the phone. I should maybe do a little 30-second video to relate to that.
Yeah.
So that was just about sort of mixing it up. But with LinkedIn, it was sort of, because I'm so new to it, do I try and do it as the company? Do I try and do it as the individual, or to do it, both together? And when I'm looking at others, it's a bit of a, you see what works for some people and I see what works for others, and it's a bit odd, if I'm honest, compared to a lot of others.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. As you kind of hit the nail on the head, actually, by saying, there isn't a strategy that works for everyone all the time. There isn't a silver bullet as such that you can take, and actually, there is a certain degree of kind of suck it and see and refining as you go along. I think definitely mixing up the different kind of content and stuff can definitely help. And within LinkedIn, certainly, you've got the ability to use text, images, videos, photos, all kinds of different things to do that. And what you probably tend to find as well is that, and certainly we found from experience, that actually tailoring the kind of content that you're putting out into the world to the time of day can make a difference as well. So for instance, we tend to find clients where we analyze their analytics and find, for instance, they've got a high degree of engagement first thing in the morning. We tend to find actually, if it's people, say, on the commute or, just while they're pottering around first thing in the morning getting ready, that actually kind of quick, punchy updates, like text updates, asking a quick question, those kind of things tend to get a little bit more engagement kind of first thing in the morning. Slightly longer posts that might encourage, the think piece replies from people and get people thinking and engaged in more of a debate, tend to work a little bit better in the evenings when people have got the time to sit and engage them and they're kind of scrolling and stuff at nighttime. Similarly, videos and stuff, you'll notice that, first thing in the morning videos potentially won't get quite as much traction as, if you put them out in the middle of the day when people are sitting and have got the option to sit and watch a video for 2-3 minutes while they're having their lunch and stuff like that. So yeah, I think definitely take the time to experiment with different sorts of content. And like I say, have a think of, actually, first thing in the morning, how are most people going to sit and engage with this piece of content? Have people got, 5 minutes to watch a video at 7:30 in the morning? Probably not. So in that regard, you're probably far better pushing that to slightly later in the day where you'll get more kind of exposure and benefit for it.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a valid point. I mean, I suppose the best thing to do is to try it different ways and then record sort of what feedback you get, and then you'll be able to look at it in a few months' time and say, look, maybe all my video content should be middle of the day, and maybe just my little snap little good morning should be, in the morning.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the more kind of experience, the bigger the audience grows, the more of a kind of a sample you'll have to kind of analyze that and to work with. It can be difficult when you're, starting out for the first time in some of these ones to go, well, actually, I don't really know, what's proving to be the valuable thing at the minute. That can be a challenge. But yeah, even within kind of a month, a couple of months, you can start to identify certain patterns that work and that don't. And like I say, the analytics within, not only your social platforms themselves, but the website itself to tell you where people are coming from will be a pretty good guide for
definitely. Yeah. I mean, one of my best friends who's very successful on LinkedIn, he was sort of talking to me about, sort of when I went to do a post the other day, sort of my company update, it was quite a large bit of text, and where I put it on Facebook and there was no hashtags because I don't use hashtags on Facebook, I managed to fit it all in. It looked okay. It didn't look to me too much of a spiel. It did what it had to do. But when I went to put it on LinkedIn, it said, "Oh no, you've used too much." So I had to sort of get rid of the sort of the bit that I didn't really want to get rid of. But I had to do that to fit it in. And even when I posted it, he said, "Yeah, it's good, but your bullet points are, for instance," he said, "your bullet points are all, some of them go over to a sentence." And he says he's found over the years of doing it that having them stick to a sentence, especially on LinkedIn where you can see it like that, it just stands out, and people may look at it and think, actually, I'll give it some time. I'll skim it rather than hang on, there's too much words there.
Yeah,
so simple things like that, really.
Definitely. And same kind of theory with the video stuff as well. Standing in front of a video and waffling for a minute before getting to the point isn't going to do a huge amount of good, actually. When people are flicking on and scrolling down within 3-5 seconds of starting a video, it needs to be really apparent right from the off what it is that video is.
Yeah, I mean, I think
whether that's the title, whether that's what you're saying, but grabbing people right from the off, whatever kind of content you're putting out, is crucial.
Brilliant. I mean, I think from here on, I'm going to start with maybe 30 second to a minute videos just to see how they go. Because I definitely won't want to hear myself speak for 2 minutes. I don't doubt anybody else would. But see how probably they get on. Because what I want to do videos to, when I look at all my competitors and I look at different people, I say, well, it's pretty much just photo content and it's pretty samey. I try and break mine up a little bit, but most of the other ones, it's the same. And I always fear that I try and post 3 times a week, and I'm thinking I need to mix it up because I'm not going to want to share if it's the same stuff. But I also want to do those sort of catchy videos, little, it might bring a smile to your face and also give you the answers that you might need, but also to store them on there so people can look at it later on and say, I wonder if I need to give him a call. Or actually, he's answered that. Do all the mattresses go on a van floor? Or do they actually go in mattress protectors? Because I've seen that 30-second funny video with him popping in the van.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Sorry, guys. I need to go. I've got a call at 1:00. But thank you so much, Ben. I did send you a text.
No worries, Charlene. Lovely to see you.
See you, Charlene.
You too. Nice to meet you all, guys. And I will send you a couple of questions if you have the time, Ben. If you don't, I completely understand. I would have asked.
Pleasure. Yeah, no worries. And drop me a note with on the WordPress thing, and we'll pick that up offline as well.
Right. Perfect. Cool. Thanks so much.
See you, Charlene.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
See you. Thanks.
Cool. Sorry, I've lost train of thought now. Where were we?
Videos, LinkedIn, just sort of keeping it short, sweet, and mixing it up.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the name of the game. And like I say, test, refine, adapt as you go through, and you'll start to see, like I say, fairly quickly, what works, what doesn't work. It's a brutal world out there. There's plenty of content out there with no likes and no comments.
Do we find, so we're speaking about LinkedIn now, do we find that sort of certain platforms, LinkedIn, you've got to make sure you're using the right sort of hashtags to get there, or that should be really resolved to sort of your Instagram, your Twitters? Because I'm just thinking, you know, in terms
quite
of
active for hashtags as well. Yeah, definitely worth using the hashtags within there. And again, you can, there's various tools. I'll send some links that you can have a look at, that you can kind of have a look and see actually which are the kind of really engaged hashtags and stuff, and what are
gotcha.
people using. Again, in that instance, then things like, you know, ultimately, what are your competition using? Things like that will be a great guide for, you know, actually what is working locally, and at the same time, maybe what isn't working for those guys. And are there any niches that you guys can be exploring that, you know, by a process of elimination, your competition aren't?
Yeah, brilliant.
It's a tough one as well at the minute, because ultimately we're all in, I think, a situation of every day is the bloody same. And until we actually start getting back into work and you've got that more regular, varied day to day, it is going to be tough to find, you know, new ways of talking about the same things. But yeah, certainly, I mean, just this week you mentioned, you know, you've got a few things lined up that you're going out for this week. You'll find immediately, you'll find half a dozen different ideas pop to your mind for ways that you can kind of repurpose that out into your socials and stuff as well. So
yeah, definitely.
Like I say, mix it up, and like I say, if you kind of test it, keep an eye on it, and refine it as you go, then yeah, hopefully before too long you'll be able to hit on kind of a strategy that works really well for you.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Cheers.
Sweet. And then now this is a whole bag of cans of worms individually to get into here. Any tips for starting out with Google AdWords? Now I'm going to add a disclaimer right to the start of this, which is that I am not a pay-per-click expert by any stretch. I actually have a pay-per-click expert that I work with when it comes to these kind of campaigns, called Bright Design in Northampton, who are quite honestly the best company within about 50-60 miles of here. And so anything kind of AdWord kind of pay-per-click related, I tend to bring them in for kind of projects to work with me on, because ultimately it is something that's very easy to get into, Google AdWords and stuff, and can be a really useful tool for driving traffic through, especially in the early days, you know, when maybe you haven't got the big established search engine platform that means you're right at the top of page one of Google. This is a way that you can buy yourself onto page one of Google right away. Problem with that is, obviously, you know, your objective is to get business for Seb, to get visitors coming through to the Nenscape, for instance. But Google's objective is to make money. So with that regard, it can be, if you're not careful with it, a bit of a drain sometimes, in terms of money just kind of disappearing on, you know, what can potentially be fairly low quality leads coming through to you. And, you know, what we tend to find is, you know, in that instance, you'll look at a website analytics and, you know, the bounce rate is at 80-85%, and you can see instantly, okay, well, look, the AdWords that are delivering people here aren't working, because as soon as people land, they're just jumping straight off the page. But so in terms of some general rules of thumb for people that are planning on kind of diving straight in and donning the flame-proof goggles for themselves, we say to people all the time, first thing, be sure to check on your geographical settings. There's nothing worse than realizing you are delivering ads to people in, I don't know, Bangladesh or somewhere completely irrelevant to you, that, you know, much as a great service that you might be delivering, Seb, I don't think you're going to get many calls to downtown Dhaka to be going and doing kind of removal jobs and stuff. So yeah, always make sure, it sounds really silly, but be sure that you've kind of locked down your kind of geographical settings, and by extension, things like your daily budgets, and stuff like that, to make sure that actually the parameters of the campaign right off the bat are what you want them to be. There's nothing worse than missing a box or not checking a setting for, you know, what your daily cap is and stuff, and logging in a week later to realize, oh shit, I've spent a fortune and I've got nothing to show for it. Second one, Google have got this really nasty habit of going, oh, we've noticed this potential opportunity for you. So in 48 hours, we're going to change your bid strategy and up your upper bid price and make you X amount more competitive, which is potentially great, but ultimately might not be kind of in keeping with what you've got in mind for both your spend and your objectives for Google AdWords and stuff as well. So we always say to people to make sure you keep on top of those kind of notifications and proposed changes when they come through, because otherwise in the blink of an eye, something can change and your campaign can start performing, you know, wildly different. The classic example I can give you is a guy that we were speaking to a little while ago, who ran kind of an exhibition hire company, doing like kind of chairs, tables, pop-up stands and stuff for exhibitions. And he kind of logged into his account first thing in the morning and was like, well, you know, where's all the budget gone, and why am I seeing all these adverts in, it was somewhere around like Iraq or Iran or something. And so they contacted Google and went, oh yeah, well, we saw a big spike in search traffic in that location. We thought it matched your campaign. So we just funneled your monthly budget over there. And that's like, well, okay, great. Well, I'm sure now all the guys down in, Iran or Lebanon, wherever it was, that's really useful for them, but ultimately I'm buggered now for the next month. So yeah, it's sneaky. Keep on top of those kind of notifications and stuff that come through. And one thing it's always worth kind of getting into, and these are kind of a two-parter, 3 and 4, is to actually try and do the research on your your campaigns and what you're trying to do before you start kind of spending a huge amount on it, for instance. So things like the regional trends you'll tend to notice, like in cities, for instance, in London, you might get a significantly higher proportion of ads being delivered and acted on mobile devices, say first thing in the morning, late in the evening. Matching user behavior, we know that's because everyone's on their commute first thing in the morning and late in the evening, and they're therefore on their phone, which is why in that instance, making sure that your landing pages on your site, for instance, are optimized for mobile is going to be crucial, because the majority of those campaigns are delivering people within a mobile environment. So make sure that before you start spending a huge amount in any of these areas, that kind of what the prevailing trends and rules of those kind of areas are, and how best to kind of tailor your campaign to it. And do the research with the Google keyword tools as well. I think the link was in maybe last week or week 3's presentation, but there is within Google a thing called the keyword planner, where you can kind of go in and do some of your research kind of upfront on, what are the popular keywords, what tends to, be the best performing kind of keywords. And, you can start to, again, reverse engineer your kind of campaigns a little bit that way, just by doing that kind of initial kind of research right off the bat. We always say to people, if possible, try and take the steps to optimize your site before you start to deliver campaigns through to it. So, while it's dead efficient to just put a link from Google that says land people onto my homepage, actually, if people are looking for a very specific product, for instance, then just landing on an organization's homepage is possibly the worst place they can land, because they're still none the wiser as to where it is they're actually supposed to be looking for, the product that they started looking for. And in that instance, you're going to end up with the same again, very high bounce rate and very few kind of conversions when it comes to actually, say, buying that product. So with that in mind, obviously make sure that, when you're setting up campaigns for a specific product, that's ultimately where they land at, that when they land on that page, it's very easy and prominent for them to find the buy it now button or the contact us button, and things like making sure the call to actions are in place, and it's all geared around kind of driving people through to the next stage of that kind of sales process. So think about where you're ultimately trying to deliver website visitors to, and make sure that experience is as optimal as it can be before, again, you start spending a fortune kind of ferrying people through to there. And last one, just to loop back to my initial point right at the start, if unsure, talk to an expert, because ultimately, someone that's, a pay-per-click expert that runs these campaigns day in, day out will very quickly and very easily be able to make these campaigns run far more efficiently than a badly run campaign that's just kind of hemorrhaging cash for you guys. So while it sounds counterintuitive to, bring somebody else in to, save you money, ultimately we've found on experience that is definitely something to be thought about if you can. And with that regard, there are people within Google that you can talk to around Google AdWords campaigns and stuff that will go through your ads, your campaigns, your buy-in strategy with you, and assess how effective it is and how useful it should be for you, with a pinch of salt, because obviously Google's objectives, as I said right at the start, is going to differ slightly from yours. But yeah, ultimately, if you're not sure, again, there are people at the end of the phone within Google that you can kind of call up and speak to and get some kind of a steer on the kind of the health and potential benefit of your campaign at any point as well. So yeah, like I say, more than happy, if anyone's interested in that kind of stuff, I'm more than happy to put you in touch with Luke, that we deal with at Bright Design all the time. Like I said, pay-per-click, super useful. And ideally over time, if the work that we've talked about over the last few weeks, does what it's supposed to, ultimately over time, the lines kind of cross over, and you're less reliant on pay-per-click, because your SEO has got to such a point where your site is, top of Google rankings and performing really well anyway. So, we tend to look at them as different stages of a particular company's life cycle. But yeah, certainly right off the bat, pay-per-click, very useful. if done right, if that makes sense. So with that in mind, they're all the questions I had shared explicitly with me today. Obviously, we've covered a few as we've gone through as well. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to ask or mention while we were here?
Is that all mine answered, Ben? I'm sure it is.
I tell you what, I've got your message in front of me here,
I'm
actually.
sure you have.
So
It
let
was
me
sort of
just pull up the
LinkedIn,
message
which
you sent me.
I'm sure it
So
was
LinkedIn, we talked
LinkedIn.
about mixing up
That's
content. We talked about, and hashtags more important than content. Yeah, I think again, it'll depend on the platform in terms of hashtags versus content. I think ideally, as much as possible, you want to try and maximize the real estate for you. It wants to talk about you and what you're doing. But yeah, that said, I mean, the hashtags are still a super important way of signposting and helping you kind of reach new people. I'd say, like, depending the platform that you're on. I mean, Instagram, you can have up to 30. Twitter, by design, there's a limit to how many you can put in there and stuff. And you'll start to get a feel for Twitter. I tend to use maybe a couple at best.
Yeah, I'm starting to find
I'll be a little
Twitter
more elaborate with.
Yeah.
But also take the advantage of as well, of making, hashtags part of your regular updates, So for instance, if I was putting a tweet out about today, I wouldn't necessarily make it, looking forward to our 12 p.m. webinar for Nene Valley on digital marketing, hashtag webinar, hashtag digital marketing. You can condense the two and make it looking forward to our hashtag digital marketing, hashtag webinar,
gotcha.
The Nene Valley and stuff like that. So where you're in spaces like Twitter, where you've got a little bit more limited real estate, then yeah, be creative with it and stuff like that.
I see that all the time, but I didn't, I haven't actually thought about doing it.
No, that's quite a useful way of kind of killing two birds with one stone and saving yourself a bit of space.
No, very good. Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, it only happened sort of the other day. Well, it's happened a couple of times on Twitter where I've put it on. I think, God, what am I going to get rid of? Should I get rid of the content? Well, I can't because that's quite important. But really, I want there to be a certain reach.
Yeah.
But that, I suppose it depends on the type of content and the type of reach you're trying to get. But like you've just said, I mean, that's a really useful tool for hitting the nail on the head and trying to get a bit of both worlds, isn't it? So I'll give that a try.
Yeah, and don't forget, within Twitter, you can now thread tweets together as well, using the little plus sign. If you need to go on to a second or third tweet, you can thread them together a little bit more efficiently now than you used to be able to. It's still not great from a user point of view, but it's slightly easier.
I've done it twice. I've done 2 tweets which were multiple, and in terms of how the end result was, I wasn't too happy. And when I'm going through my feed looking at others, when it's more than one and it's a lot, I lose interest automatically sometimes.
Yeah.
So I do think that unless it's a big announcement or unless it's quite important, or there's obviously going to be a big context to it, try and keep it short, sweet, to the point, and go from there.
I tend to find the really long threads of tweets on Twitter are people who are kind of sat at their machines like, right, here, let me, do you know what I mean? It's like guys that had a really bad experience at their dinner and thought, I'm not going to say anything now, but I'm going to rinse them on TripAdvisor later. It's that kind of mentality with the really long threaded tweets I tend to find. But again, there's options there. It's certainly gotten easier within Twitter since they made it, double the character count to 280. That's certainly made it a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't on Twitter active when it was that small, but I would have really struggled then. I sometimes struggle now, so yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, it's one of those. Twitter used to be like the Wild West back in the day when it was kind of like that. It's where I started with it was when it was in that kind of phase, Twitter, and it's why I've got such a soft spot for it now. Actually, still, I think it's one of those things. Everyone's got their one that they're really into. I'm a big Twitter fan still, and I think the main thing with it has been over the years, as it's become more algorithmically led, I think it's suffered a lot from not really being as much of a context-driven thing. Do you know what I mean? It used to be very simple to pick up the conversation and work out what's happening. And now it's sometimes a bit more disorientating trying to work out actually who said what and when and what's going on in some places, So I'm hoping maybe over time that'll find itself some kind of a balance again. But yeah, like I say, it's certainly a much easier platform to work in within these days than it was at different times in the past when things like your links would end up taking up half a character count and usernames and stuff. It was a solid nightmare. But no, hopefully, like I say, that was useful for you guys. He says, raising one eyebrow.
Yes, no, you've answered all my questions, Ben. Definitely.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. Yeah, some really good refresher stuff and some new stuff in there as well. So thank you so much.
Well, as ever, if there's anything that comes to you guys kind of offline that you want to kind of mention or ask about, as ever, you know where I am. Next week we are marketing stacks, so we're looking at some specific kind of tools, apps, bits of software for use across a range of different things. Next week there's some website facing things, we've got some kind of intelligence analytics, some social tools, a bit of a mix, but again, like I say, hopefully something that you guys will be able to take away at least one or two of the ideas and start putting to use in one kind of area or another with your kind of activity that you're working on day to day. Then as ever, I'll stick the slides online at the end of this session. I can't remember if the link is in here now. Yeah, sovereighncreative.com/webinars for the slides. And yeah, like I say, feel free to give us a shout if there's anything else that crops up in the meantime. But yeah, otherwise, lovely to see you guys as ever. Have a good rest of the weekend out there at your end. And yeah, look forward to hopefully seeing you Friday next week.
Yeah, cheers, Ben. Cheers, Ali.
Thank
Have a
you
good weekend.
so much, Ben.
Awesome.
Take
no
care.
worries, as ever.
Bye.
Always a pleasure,
Cheers,
guys.
Al.
Have a lovely weekend, won't you?
Take
And
care.
you guys.
Take
Take
care.
care.
Cheers,
Bye.
guys.
Cheerio.
Bye.